Hello there, my friend Jonathan Doyle with you once again. Welcome to the Kinda Daily podcast. Do these as often as possible amidst the busyness and craziness of my life. It's been a little while since I talked to you guys. I've been on a couple of US speaking tours. When I say a couple, it's interesting because you go and do one, you come back, your body clock readjusts, and went back again about 10 days later. And my body's like, dude, what are you doing? Seriously, could we not just do this in one go? Do we have to just do these multiple visits so we sort of calibrate and recalibrate? But it's been awesome. I've had a wonderful time speaking all over the US. One of the highlights was, I think, New Orleans, where I had 6,000 people in the room, which was really cool. Great city, loved being there. And then since I've been back, just multiple trips into different parts of Australia to speak. And it's been great. It's a real privilege, speaking in Tasmania, in Melbourne, in Sydney, just over the last couple of weeks. And I turned 50 on Friday last week. Can you believe that? 50. I know many of you that know me think, Jonathan, you can't be serious. You still have the rugged good looks and boyish charm of a young Tom Cruise. And I go, it's true, you are correct. That is correct. But, we're all getting older. We're all on a journey back home to heaven, right? So turned 50. I'm still feeling pretty young. I'm actually in the studio now. It's 4:20 a.m. I woke up at about 2:15 a.m. this morning. Got a lot of stuff, a lot of work happening at the moment. So I'm like, don't want to stare at the ceiling for the next 3 hours. I'm just going to get up and get after it. So I will rest later in the day. Please do not send me emails going, Jonathan, we're worried about you. What are you doing? I'm going to go and do a training ride in about an hour, and then we'll get some rest on the back end of the day, I do promise. My friend, I wanted to talk to you today about a really important topic. I did a radio interview last week where I was talking about the concept of self-sabotage. And it comes up a lot. People get really interested in this because it's a topic that I've worked on and in for a long time. I've worked with CEOs of major entities, dealing with billions of dollars, and you would be amazed. I remember working with one CEO who just had this self-sabotage, imposter syndrome thing going on. So I said to someone recently that, self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, it gets to all of us. Like, it doesn't matter whether you are running a nation or you are a single person. Most of us at some level have this experience of self-sabotage. And, the obvious question is, what causes it and what can we do about it? And I said in this interview that we all labor under the illusion that we are rational and that we are always acting in our best interests at all times. It makes sense, doesn't it? We would like to think that we go about our lives always acting in our best interests. Of course we don't. I mean, it's really obvious. Look at sometimes how we eat or drink or addictions and all the different things that we can end up getting stuck in life. There's vast amounts of evidence that we don't always act in our best interest. So why wouldn't we? Wouldn't it make sense to just always do the things that would be best for ourselves? Yes, it does make sense, but if you're paying attention to life, that's not what actually happens. So it raises the great question, why would we self-sabotage? Why do we procrastinate? Why do we do things that undermine our success? And the best explanation that I have for you at this point is simply to, delineate, to identify self-sabotage as the outworking, the manifestation of unresolved internal emotional conflicts. Unresolved internal emotional conflicts. Now, we don't need to go too far down the rabbit hole, but what we're talking about is learnings, beliefs that we developed almost always in childhood. We can definitely have trauma later in life, but in general, these are things we learn very young. And, the next thing I need you to understand is that they are almost always subconscious, sometimes semi-conscious, but rarely fully conscious, right? Rarely fully conscious. So there are things going on below the surface of our consciousness that seem to be pretty darn powerful. And one of the best ways to understand this is from a great quote from Carl Jung, of course, who split with Sigmund Freud, but, Jung really did some interesting work, and he has got this amazing quote. Listen carefully. Jung said, if you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate. If you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate. So what do I mean? Well, basically what happens is a lot of times there are forces that can shape and direct our lives, often with outcomes we don't like. And then people would just say, well, that's just the way things are. That's just fate. I've always been this way. It's just what happens. So what Jung's pointing to is if we don't start to get some awareness around these deep internal things driving us, they're going to shape our life, and we're just going to think to ourselves, well, that's just how life turned out. So what do you do? It's a bit confronting, isn't it? If I'm basically saying we've got these big internal forces shaping our lives and we're barely aware of them, what do we do? Well, I guess the thing is about making the unconscious conscious. I often say to people, what you have to do is you have to sneak up on yourself because so often we're doing things and we're moving at such a pace and we're living in such a distracted technological world that most people are rarely getting the time, space, and groundedness to discover what some of these deeper forces are, right? So the level of distraction in our culture means that people aren't often getting the silence, the stillness, the contemplation required to get in touch with these deeper forces. So I'll give you a couple of things. One, I'm really back doing a lot of journaling again. And, I like nice pens. I've got some really nice pens. I actually got really good handwriting. I've got very beautiful handwriting, which I think I need to thank my mother for. I think she's got really nice handwriting too. So I tend to, really make the time and space as frequently as possible to, really try and capture some of what I am thinking, feeling, experiencing. And there is a process in journaling that can be really powerful. And it's a commitment, it's a discipline, but as you begin to do it, this freedom comes, this kind of, you begin to think and express yourself in ways that can be quite powerful. So one of the first things that you can do is if there's something in your life that isn't working, there's something you're not experiencing that you do want to experience, there's a goal, there's issues, there's problems, there's relationship things, start the journaling process. Just begin to write. Just begin to give yourself the gift of the time and the space necessary to articulate some of what might be going on. And there just seems to be this power in it. Thomas Aquinas, writing in the 13th century, said that the hand is the conjoined instrument of the mind. The hand is the conjoined instrument of the mind. So often, we're not writing as much, right? We're all on keyboards or on phones, but this aspect of writing with our hand actually allows some things to emerge that may not emerge in other formats. All right, so that's the first thing we want to do. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about just creating the space, the time, the location, the place. It could be a cafe, it could be at home before kids are up, whatever it is for you. But think carefully about giving yourself that gift. And the second thing is just around creating times of stillness, silence, and contemplation. So one of the big things for me over many, many years has been the importance of place. I know some people have home gyms and they talk about, they like that, and I get it, but I've never been that guy. If I get a home gym, I just don't train as hard. It's just blah. So I'm really big on environment. So I go to, a specific gym because the environment reinforces what I'm trying to do. For me, when it comes to stillness, contemplation, prayer, I'm a church guy. I got to be in a beautiful church. So usually where I live here in this city, I get to the cathedral and I just love the stillness and the silence, and the building itself allows for a stillness and a settledness to come upon me that I wouldn't find, sitting in my lounge room. So I would encourage you to begin a discipline of finding a place where you have access to stillness, to silence. I use headphones. I use noise-cancelling headphones. I use any kind of hack that I can do to give myself stillness, to give myself silence, to give myself solitude. I've been saying to Karen recently that, the last 2 months I've been traveling so much, and it's been airports and people and, big events and, big audiences, and then come home and I've got my kids and all the things going on in my life, and I find that I just need a break. I need some stillness and some solitude. So one of the ways that you can start to work on this self-sabotage piece is to give yourself this gift of just settled stillness and begin to just dialogue within yourself a little bit. For me as a Christian, it's more about dialoguing with God and, having that conversation where, I believe that God wants the best for me. So that conversation is happening internally that allows for things to surface. I was teaching a group of leaders recently about this, and I said, one of the things that this kind of does for you, prayer, stillness, meditation, contemplation, is it stops you from being the office psychopath. Why? Because it allows things to come up. It allows you to get in touch with your heart, with the things that are, that you don't become aware of if you're living life at 500 miles an hour. So can you agree with me that culturally we've probably lost this piece? We've been so busy and moving so fast for so long that we've lost this kind of stuff, the ability to be in touch with those deeper forces within our lives. So, summary, if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it'll run your life and you'll call it fate. You don't want to live an unconscious life, Aristotle used to say that the unexamined life was not worth living, right? The unexamined life was not worth living. We want to examine our lives. We want to know what these forces are that are internal, that are driving us. And I think the last piece on self-sabotage, just in terms of this unresolved emotional conflict piece, would be to say that most of these unresolved internal conflicts, emotional conflicts, are conflicts about our identity and worth. What do I mean? We get hurt in life, right? We get wounded. We get hurt by people and situations, and we get bullied, or we get, and it might have been yesterday. It might have been 50 years ago. It doesn't matter. We develop this sense of self based on these kind of experiences. So part of the healing, part of the way out of self-sabotage is you are never going to do the things that you really need to do and want to do, or experience the life that you really want, if you've got this unresolved, broken sense of self. So it's learning to see yourself as God sees you. And I know my listeners are quite diverse. So what I mean is, as a parent, you see your kids for their potential. You see who they can be. You see their capacity to flourish in life. And so it's coming to see ourselves, I think, as God sees us, that God wants the best for us, wants us to flourish, wants us to have rich, beautiful relationships, wants us to use our talents and gifts in really awesome ways. So if you're self-sabotaging, it will be because at some level you fundamentally do not think that you are worth the success that you want. And that's very confronting for people to hear. And if you've got this far in today's episode, this is the hard stuff. People don't want to hear that. They want to, we want to live in blame, right? Like if things aren't working out, we want to blame the economy, the government, the world, who knows, right? I'm not minimizing real human suffering. I'm not minimizing trauma and all things that happen to us. I'm not minimizing that. But sooner or later, we can't just stay in that place. We got to move forward. And the way that you move forward is you begin to realize that it's okay for you to win. You begin to realize that, I was talking to someone recently who, is struggling with procrastination and stuff. And I'm like, well, you can get as structural as you want here. You can tweak this as much as you want. But until you believe you are worth the success that you want, you are going to undermine yourself. You are going to self-sabotage, and you are going to procrastinate, because it's this internal barometer. We're just not prepared to have the life we want while that barometer is set with a fractured sense of self. So this is deep emotional, spiritual, psychological work, and I think it's primarily spiritual, really. After all, I'm turning 50 now, so I've had long enough to think about it. It's that this is a spiritual task. It's coming to see ourselves as God sees us. And He doesn't want us to be limited. He doesn't want us to self-sabotage. He doesn't want us to undermine ourselves. I know He doesn't, because I have kids, and I don't want my kids to self-sabotage. I don't want my kids to undermine themselves. I don't want my kids to settle in life for less than what their heart's desires are. And so if that's what I can feel for my own children, what do you think God feels for you? This is hard work. It's so difficult, because it's obviously difficult because most people don't do it. They struggle to do it because we get stuck. We get familiar. We get stuck in a place where it's familiar and life looks the way it's always looked, and we write goals and we say that we want to lose 10 kilos or start this company or buy this house or this thing and move forward in life, but we don't. So why don't we? It's because we genuinely don't think we deserve it. So when you really think you're worth something and that's okay for you to want things, it's okay for you to win, it's okay for you to have success, then you start to move forward. I think often for people of faith, this is hard because it can be like you think it's pride. It's like, oh, Jonathan, you're just saying that we got to love ourselves and that's prideful. No, it's not that. It's that you're as important to God as the stars, as the cosmos, more so, right? And he's into perfection. He's into perfecting things. He's into things flourishing and growing, not staying stuck. So I don't know how else to say this to you. Summary: self-sabotage and procrastination are caused by unresolved internal emotional conflicts about our sense of self, our worth, our value. The way out of them is to make the unconscious conscious, to get in touch with them, to go deeply in touch with them, and then to replace those broken visions of self with the truth about who you really are. All right, I'm going to stop there because it's the kind of thing I could just labour the point and go on and on about, but that's the basic mechanics of it. Let me know what you think. You can email me, jonathan@jonathandoyle.co. You want to book me to speak, to work with your leaders, to work with your teams, jonathandoyle.co is the website, jonathandoyle.co.co. Go and check that out. You can find me on Instagram at jdoylespeaks. jdoylespeaks. If you've got your phone nearby, grab Instagram if you're on it and just do a search for J Doyle Speaks. You'll find me there. All right, my friend, God bless you. Let's get out of this self-sabotage. Let's keep moving forward. My name is Jonathan Doyle. This has been the Daily Podcast. You and I are going to talk again very soon.